morning, everyone. It's really great to see so many people, some wonderful faces. I said this in February. We brought Business Brew back after about a 2-year hiatus to being in person. So prior to the pandemic, we were monthly. We tried to be the first Thursday of the month. Same format, same time frame, 7:30 to 9. When the pandemic started and we were all sent home, I switched to an online format, and we did that for about 2 years. I think we ended up doing something like 13 business brews through streaming and Zoom. And then when things started opening back up, I decided to bring it back. So a couple of shout outs on that note is to Bernardo Wills. Gretchen is here from Bernardo Wills. They've given us this space. So if it's not weird, I don't know where we've been like the last 2 years, but a round of applause, is that still okay? Mm-hmm. Let's give a round of applause. There we go, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
People were like, what's clapping? And then Nathan Slaybaugh, who's working on technical stuff. So we're trying to stream, but at a minimum, we're going to be recording it, so it will be available online at some point later. So round of applause for Nathan. He's a good dude. If you need any video stuff done, Nathan's great. And we'll get to you. Go ahead, Jessica.
Okay.
Tell us who you are, what you're excited about, and then would you please give us your background and talk about this marketing thing and the tension and all that stuff?
Yeah, I'm Jessica Morgan, and I'm the art director at Union Gospel Mission. I've been working there 13 years, started out as graphic designer and work with an in-house marketing team there, and we do almost all of our marketing in-house. But I'm excited for spring because my kids can play outside more. We have a really small house and a really big yard, and I think everyone's happier when they spend time outside, and I love being outside too. It's just the way I re-energize, and just to see them enjoy the outdoors is amazing. So anyway, yeah, my background is, where do I even begin? I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Illinois, and all my family's there. I went to school in Arkansas and got a graphic design degree at a school really similar to Whitworth, a private university, faith-based. And I met my husband there, who is from Washington, and he had gone to Whitworth. So we moved up here. I was ready to be done with the Midwest. And I love the Northwest and knew this is where I wanted to call home. And anyway, I started working 13 years ago at Union Gospel Mission full-time, and they needed a brand, a visual identity, basically. They didn't really know what brand meant, and they didn't have a really solid logo. They had multiple logos and multiple looks, and so I really helped shape that. I designed the logo that is there now, and shaped the visual identity of Union Gospel Mission that you see today, and really managed the brand and how it presents visually to the community. So that is, apparently I like it because I've been there a long time. But I hated marketing to begin with, and I thought of myself as a designer and more of an artist, and really did not want to be in anything related to advertising or sales. I just had a really, I don't know if I should call it hatred, but
I think that was the word you used
really?
as we were talking about like getting a dialogue going.
That's really strong.
She was like, I don't know that I'm the right guest because I used to hate marketing, and I was like, ooh, tell me more, because like I'm a marketer, so like that's my wheelhouse. So yeah,
right.
No, but that's a perfect word. Use
okay.
it. I think there might be some people here who share that sentiment in some ways. To be
and
honest
honestly, I still feel that. You know, I don't think it's gone away. And I just think that's interesting to be in the field of marketing and to still feel like you hate it, but yeah, I must love it enough because I'm still doing it. So there's something there to it. And so I didn't take any marketing courses. I somehow snuck through college not doing that, and chose some other courses instead. But preparing for this talk, I dug a little deeper at that feeling, that hatred. Mm-hmm. So we might go a little bit deep today because I think it stemmed from my childhood.
Oh,
I know.
Yeah,
I don't know
let's unpack that. Okay, so before we touch on that,
Yeah.
I got to set a few ground rules. I didn't do this in February, and I felt really bad. I was out of practice, like a lot of people were, getting back to seeing people. So first and foremost, feel free to interrupt, ask a question, raise your hand. The only guideline around that is this really is designed to be a safe space for our speaker. So I know there's some folks here who might want to push on some things and maybe allow you to dig in.
Yeah.
But let's just keep in mind we want to be a safe. We've never had a problem, but we did have one of these where the dialogue was around sustainability and somebody, their family owned a huge farm, and there was a little bit of tension between sustainability, water conservation, and farming. And I had to take that gentleman aside and have a beer with him and say, hey, like this is supposed to be save that for afterwards. But that said, I'm all about like healthy conflict and all that. So let's dig into that. So feel free to ask questions. If you can't ask questions, I will ask questions. And then I just got the thumbs up that we are now live, which is great. So I'm going to welcome our Facebook group into this. So anybody watching on Facebook, thanks for joining us. We'll also get questions from folks online. So if you're joining us on Facebook this morning, that's great. Already 2 people popped in. So they were like sitting there waiting in their jammies, like, hey, where's Facebook or where's Business Brew? I want to know what's going on. So I'll try to interrupt with questions from there as well. If you are joining us on Facebook, feel free to use the comments to ask questions and also introduce yourself. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that hatred.
Let's start way
First,
back.
Will you define what you mean by that? Because I think, like, my view of marketing has always been more of like a storytelling thing, right? Like, it's not the manipulative side that I know a lot of people think about. It's more, my business or my brand has a story to tell, and I need to get that story out. So you give me a little bit of like that definition of where that comes from.
Sure, I think it comes from being a consumer, and I think we might experience being pushed by other brands out wanting to advertise towards us and really want our business, right? So I think it stems from that, of not wanting to be convinced that their product or their brand or their mission is for me. I think that sort of influence and coming at me makes me really uncomfortable, and I don't want to do that to people. And because I feel that way with brands and messaging, I hated advertisements and commercials and billboards, all the stuff that is kind of what you need to do to get your message out there. I just felt the pressure from all of that and didn't want to do that to other people. So that's where the hatred
Well, I think that makes
from.
a lot of sense too. And I think a lot of, you have kids, I have kids, and I think a lot about how my kids will know jingles, and we're not plugged into cable or satellite TV or anything, but still, even now, between YouTube and even just games, if they play any kind of game on a phone ever, they're gonna get an ad. And my kids' ability to know jingles and ads, that is where it starts to, because cereal commercials aren't targeted at us, they're targeted at kids, and that is icky.
Yeah,
right?
It feels like brainwashing, and it feels like pushing into your space. I know, extreme terms. I'm using extreme terms, but honestly, it just feels like it's infiltrating into your life, and they're trying to get you. And
yeah, insidious. That's a good word.
So that's I guess my definition of the discomfort that I personally experience, but I think a lot of people do too.
They do, and actually some famous marketers. So Seth Godin's a person that I really like, and I follow his stuff, and he wrote a book called Permission Marketing or Permission-Based Marketing, all about that concept of you need to be invited into somebody's space. Don't, advertise your way into their space. And if you tell or create a good enough story, people will want to they'll opt into it, right?
Yeah, I think that's where marketing's really going. I think the traditional old style marketing is pushing and shouting it, and dispersing it to as many people as possible. But inbound marketing and permission marketing, I think, is really the direction that it's moving. So, and I'm really happy about that.
Yeah. So, okay. So we've set your definition. So let's talk a little bit about where that comes from. Tell me what's going on.
Okay.
Let's dig deep.
All right. I'll try not to talk too much about where I went really deep.
No, it's fine. I think it's great.
But, okay. So growing up, my family moved around a lot through the Midwest, and I went to 8 different schools between kindergarten and 12th grade, and that's a lot for anybody. And we had a pretty solid family unit, but that kind of readjusting from one social structure to another, one school curriculum to another, one environment to another, over and over and over. I think I got kind of good at maybe, I don't know if reading people, but like assessing the way things felt and knowing what was worth putting my energy into, what relationships were worth pursuing, and what ones were gonna suck me dry, and just take all your energy. So just having to readjust like that. So when I was in 3rd grade, my mom had to find a friend for me because I was so lonely. And so she called my teacher and was like, can you help Jessica find a friend? She doesn't have anyone, and she's readjusting to this new class. And I guess I was lonely. I don't know. Somehow she knew. And so they found a friend for me and said, go play with her at recess. And all this girl wanted to do was sit on the jungle gym and talk with her friends. And it was boring. And I gave it a try. I gave it a couple weeks, of just going and sitting and listening to her friends talk. But I was like, this is not what I want to do. And I don't think we can be real friends. And then I met this other girl in the classroom, and she was easy to be with. And she was fun, and we laughed and had conversation easily. And at recess, we would run and play and get all of our energy out, and it was a natural relationship. And I think I took that experience and just kind of had what really works in a relationship and what doesn't, or not just in relationship, but in experience. And when something is forced, or where you're convinced that this is right for you, or you're trying to make things happen, it doesn't work, and it's not worth your energy. And that's really, I know that's deep, and that maybe is a hard thing to connect, but the friendships and relationships worth building with your brand are the ones that are natural and the ones that are compatible and sincere. They aren't forced. And I don't know, maybe that's not where my hatred for marketing came from, but I think I did learn that there are some things not worth your energy, and I am not going to be convinced that your brand or this friendship or this product is for me. I need to feel that it's right, and I need to know that it's right.
I think that makes a ton of sense, and especially thinking about the transition that's been happening in marketing for, I don't want to say 20 years, but I know it's been happening at least for 10 or 15. I was first introduced to Seth Godin with his book Small is the New Big in like 2006, so I know it's been a little while. But the idea that if you see an ad on Facebook versus Will sharing a product that he loves, which one are we going to trust and value more? So that's, I guess, my first question is how, in your experience, how would I transition away from trying to advertise or reach people without permission into creating an experience where they want to share what's going on, right?
Yeah, I think you might naturally have people who are advocates for your brand, and I know that's people are using influencers or paying influencers to promote their brands, and even that feels insincere to me. It's smart in a lot of ways, but I think there are people who are naturally excited about what you do. Those are your people, and they're the ones that can tell your story maybe better than you can in a lot of ways, because whatever you're doing works for them. And I just think you have to study the chemistry there. There's something natural in that relationship, and how can you make that natural for other people too?
So that is something. Okay, so I know your experiences with Union Gospel Mission, but you did kind of come into kind of a tough situation, right? Like their brand was all over. So can you walk me through the process that you went through in helping them maybe resurrect or update their brand, and what that has meant for them? Because I think one of those PSs to marketing is having a really good brand. And if I'm a small business or a really small business, I might go, okay, I'm not Nike. How do I build a brand, right? So what were some of the things you went through with them, and talk about some of those conversations you had?
Sure, okay. There's a lot there.
Good.
Well, I went with what I was good at, and that was what I just came out of school with was, how do you simply and clearly communicate a message? You have to do it consistently across every channel that you're, like, every time they encounter UGM, that needs to feel like UGM, it needs to look like UGM, it needs to sound like UGM. And that is kind of where I started. Like, it all needs to be the same. So we ended up renaming some of our departments and locations to, they all say Union Gospel Mission. And I did it visually, by saying we have one font and this is what we're going to use for everything, which was kind of a hard sell, and these are the colors that you're using.
I can't use Comic Sans anymore?
I know. And you can't make your own signs anymore. You have to go through the marketing department.
I really want to give you space, but anytime I go into a business, and I was just at one, there was a spot in Coeur d'Alene. They have this beautiful, it's a wine tasting place, like a wine shop, beautiful chalkboard, but they were out of white wine. So somebody had taken a giant white piece of paper and written in Sharpie, "No white wines," and then taped it onto the chalkboard. You can't find somebody to come just write in chalk?
Oh,
That
nice.
kills me. Oh, because that's not building, like it's not building a consistent message. It's like,
No.
when we're out of white wine, we'll just slap a sign on there. Okay,
It looks
sorry.
like, yeah. Well, one of the phrases we use in our department is consistency lends credibility. And the more you're consistent, the more credible you seem, you know. So, and I think that's true in your personal life too, in your relationships, is consistency. So that's huge, but I went in still not loving marketing to UGM, right? And I felt like nonprofits tend to dramatize their story sometimes, where it's like, here's the sad story, here's you, and here's the happy ending. And it can be made this extreme story arc where it starts to feel manipulative because it's, you know, it's intense. But I just thought, okay, there's amazing things happening at UGM. There are like lives being changed every day. There are families being restored. There's generations, cycles of addiction that are just stopping, you know, and that's a powerful story, and you don't need to dramatize that, and you don't need to make it any more simple than that. I think the story on its own was beautiful, so I felt like we need to get out of the way of the story and just put that in the forefront. We don't need to make dramatic photos. We don't need to, I don't know, just say people are suffering and dying, so you've got to donate today. Like, really, these stories and these faces and these people I'm meeting are amazing on their own. So my goal was to create a brand that was clean enough that isn't what they noticed. They didn't notice, oh, look at that cool logo, or look at those amazing colors and dramatic photographs. It was like, no, hear the story, see the face, that's it, you know? And so the font I chose was really unassuming, and like the colors and the designs weren't taking center stage. So that was really my idea, that I didn't have to go out and tell people or convince people that this was awesome, because it just was already. And I think a lot of our, yeah, go ahead.
Did you have any kind of like data to inform your decision that way, to say like, okay, if we use this specific font or the color layout, it's going to be less obtrusive, or, you know, inspire a good feeling when that story's conveyed, that sort of thing? Did you have any data to make a choice like that? Or was it purely aesthetic for you?
So before you answer,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure the people online hear that. So we just got a question about whether or not you used research or any kind of data to inform your font and branding decisions. So go ahead.
I did research. I didn't like make a spreadsheet, and but I took my knowledge from what I heard in schooling and did my own research. And I mostly researched other nonprofits and other rescue missions across the country and what they were doing. And I really didn't like what they were doing because it felt all the same. And I thought, I think we need to know who we are personally and not try to look look like what everybody else is looking like.
Did you use any kind of metric when you looked at those, like some kind of benchmark you set for yourself?
Sort of, in that, like, so UGM's logo before was a house with a heart in it and a little cross on the roof. And that logo was everywhere. Not exact, but all the other rescue missions were using little houses to represent shelter, hearts to represent compassion, and the cross to represent faith-based. And they were doing it, like those symbols, I'm like, those are very elementary symbols, and they're showing up in rescue missions and nonprofits everywhere. And I think we can do better than that. I think we don't have to use elementary shapes and symbols to communicate who we are. So I just found that off-putting to like just stick with the basics. You know, I thought we can be a little more complex in how we know ourselves. And I also noticed that blue and green was a very common color used in not just nonprofits, but not just rescue missions, but nonprofits everywhere, churches everywhere. It was blue and green,
And
healing
people
spiritual
holding
colors.
hands, right?
Yeah, hands. was
people
another
holding
big one.
hands for nonprofits is like, it's like red and black and white for construction. Like those are the most popular colors you
And
will
maybe
see.
it's because it works. I don't know, but
does it, or is it just that that's what we see all the time,
yeah.
right?
So I thought, well, I just really want to know, and I did I interviewed a lot of our department heads, or all of them, to try to know, what is it you do every day, and what does this place mean to you, and what are the core messages and things happening that need to be reflected. And so I did that kind of research, where it wasn't like numbers. And I mean, I tried to use marketing expertise and read articles and stuff too, but I don't know, maybe that answers the question a little bit, yeah.
I think the tendency sometimes too, especially with like academic marketing, so I was really glad to hear you say that you didn't take courses in, and I say this as I am going through my MBA and then having to take marketing classes, and I think there's a lot of value in that, but marketing, and like a lot of things, can get really academic, and then it loses, I think there's something lost there. So yeah, I'm sure there's all kinds of data and research on fonts and colors and all this stuff, but does that get you so far away from where you lose touch with what you're actually, what your story is, you said the look, the feel, and the sound. You could do so much research that you actually get away from what's natural, right?
Yeah, well, that's interesting.
I was actually really happy when you said you had to take marketing courses, because I was like, oh good, they didn't beat the creativity out of it.
For sure. I mean, I took like color theory class, so I really dug deep into the psychology behind color. I mean, I chose and convinced them to use dark brown as their main color, as UGM's main color. And a lot of people are like, why did you do that? Brown? Well, there's a psychology that really works with brown, and that it's a safe color, and it's a grounding color, and you don't feel a lot of emotional reaction to it. And it feels stable, and I just wanted, I knew that UGM's been around since 1951 here in Spokane, and I like really wanted to tap into the history of UGM in this community. So there's thought behind all of it, for sure. And there's a lot of symbolism in the design of the brand, but it doesn't have to be explained. It's just you sense it when you interact with it.
So you've said so many things I really want to get into, but I find myself really curious about the process. So you come in, what was your, I don't want to get lost on titles, but what was your position when you were hired in?
Graphic designer / publications.
Did they have other marketing staff at that time?
They had a writer and a marketing director.
Okay, so you reported to somebody. Mm-hmm. So how did you work these and facilitate these changes from the bottom up?
Well, so they were going to hire an agency and pay like $40,000 to have a rebrand and then more money to have like a website all at once. And I don't know how I was in the meeting, but there was an executive director and the marketing director and a few other people above me talking about this decision, and I was just like, hey, I was trained to do this, and you can just pay me your normal salary, and I will, sorry to touch the microphone, just realized, and I will do this for you, please just give me the time and space, and I will create an identity for UGM. So somehow I had the wherewithal to be like, don't pay them all this money to design a logo, I know how to do this. And so that's how it started, I guess, but I did have to really do some tests with like fonts and to get people to buy into like just having this one font. That's I believe is really a major component to our brand that people wouldn't even think. But yeah.
I think you're right. I think a lot of times the best branding goes unnoticed, unlike that wine shop, and you can see examples of this all the time where, especially during the pandemic, and I know things were rough for a lot of people, but their store hours change. Mm-hmm. Well, we already had it put on the door with a sticker, so do I pay somebody to come in and change that, or do I just, again, white piece of paper, Sharpie, fix it? And what I don't understand in that moment is you have a printer probably, right? Even if you just put something in Word and use your font and print it and use sticky dots instead of tape, you're in a better spot. And I know a lot of it is you don't see it, right? They don't think like that. Yeah. But I think you're right that the best stuff goes unnoticed in a lot of those cases. The other thing you said that I thought was really great was consistency lends credibility. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like I'm new, I started my business, I barely have a logo. Like, what does that mean? And that's a little bit of the long game, right?
Mm-hmm, for sure. And I can't take credit for that phrase. We have a direct mail company that we work with, and they gave us that phrase to really encourage all of our messaging to be, it was kind of what I was saying from the beginning, everything has to be the same, but that phrase was awesome. So, yeah. But for me, it was making sure that all of our designs and photography, everything looks like it goes together. But every interaction when they walk into one of our thrift stores or when they answer the phone, somebody answers the phone, it needs to all feel and be people think that's controlling, but I just think it's clean and it's professional to have it all go together so that every interaction feels like the brand, you know.
I think if you find yourself going, that feels controlling, you probably shouldn't be in charge of marketing, because I 100% agree, especially if you have, you know, either multiple locations or if you just have a physical location versus everything's digital. I think in the digital space, it's relatively easy to get everything consistent. You just have to be a little bit intentional, right? So I have to make sure my logo's in the right spot and I have a good cover photo, and then you're not really in control of fonts when you post, but you are in control of what's written. When you have a retail location and you have staff and you have people answering a phone, that becomes a little bit less manageable. So as person who's hired as graphic design and now you're art director, how does your department facilitate that, you know, now top down, right?
Yeah. It's hard. I just think you have to repeat yourself a lot, and you have to be confident in that, because if people sense hesitancy, because I think I used to go in with hesitation, be like, I'm really sorry, but you can't use that font, and that lack of confidence makes them be like, how, I don't trust you. You're like, why can't I do this? You know, why can't I add textures behind my email? You know, and I just think there's a confidence in, like, this is going to help you. I believe in what you're doing, and I am going to give you the best presentation possible in all of your publications and in all your signage. And so I grew in that not being afraid to know that this is best for all of us, and we all are here for the same reason and the same mission, and I'm in this for you, you know. So having that confidence has helped people believe, I think, our department a little bit more. But also consistency in the statistics we're putting out there, you know, and the things we're saying to people. The information has to be consistent, because as soon as those start changing, then you lose credibility.
And that happens a lot. And I know, so this is my favorite, I think, of all my nuggets that I've learned about you, is that you're not on social media at all, which was really tricky and difficult for me in terms of like Nathan, I'm inviting him as a co-host, and Bernardo Wills, I'm tagging and stuff, and I'm just putting your name out there, and you're not really a human, right? If you can't but you're not on social media, and I think, but you know about it, you obviously understand it, and that's a place where I find a lot of people, like, I'm on Instagram, but my business sounds and looks and acts different on Instagram than it does on Facebook, and sure, there are differences in the platforms and how you need to treat them, but you don't get to just go here and be one thing and then go here and be something else, right?
For sure.
Like, so how does your department interact with your social media department? How do you or your person, and how do you navigate those challenges? Are you having those conversations?
Yeah, we're strategizing together, and I mean, our profiles are still public, so I can go look at them and assess how they look and feel. And it's just being in communication with the person managing it and how what they're dealing with, right? So I just think, like, what's the core of what you do that you think you do really, really well? I think our website's pretty awesome, and I think our newsletters are awesome. And how can you bring that same, whatever's working there, into your other realms, you know? So our strong photography and the faces, I think, are of the people that we're serving. I think that's one of the biggest parts of our brand messaging, is just seeing them, looking into their eyes, and putting that on our platforms everywhere, along with their powerful quotes. Like, we quote people and we get their faces, and that is everywhere for us.
So that was one of your billboard campaigns that you were running. I don't know if you still are. I don't tend to pay too much attention to billboards, but I know you were running one. It was a face, and it would say, like, the word attic would be crossed out, and was that something that you were behind or involved with? And
our team, it was definitely a team collaboration on that. Like, I took the photos and designed it, but the concept was really a team effort. And that was a campaign that went for maybe 3 years, and we're on a different one now, but that one really resonated with our community, where it was so simple. It was just like taking away the label of that we put in the stigma on people who are in the lowest places of life, and just giving them a name and a face. So yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that. That's I feel like a really good place to transition. So Union Gospel Mission has a different, so I think, like Vista Title, I think about, we have some folks here from Vista Title. So while they can deal directly with somebody who's buying a home or selling a home, they also need to work directly with that whole real estate community. They need to be out talking and marketing to anybody involved with a real estate transaction. That's a pretty understandable market, right? but you're dealing with people who are experiencing homelessness, but then you also have people who need to support your mission, whether it's financially or through volunteers. So how do you navigate that space where you are sort of trying to market to people who are experiencing homelessness, but you're also trying to market who people are going to support the mission? How do you do that?
The story is the same no matter what. That there is, when you come to Union Gospel Mission, it's not just a shelter. It's not a soup kitchen like a lot of people might think of homeless shelters. You come and we're trying to help you find a pathway out of homelessness. And that is a message that resonates with donors, and it resonates with people who need the help. So that story doesn't change of what UGM exists for. It's to help people find a pathway out of homelessness. And when they come to the door, that they're going to find that in some way, in maybe a little small way, maybe it's just a step toward that. But other people who go through long-term recovery will find it in really big ways, right? So that, I just think the message is the same no matter what, that we don't have to cater it as much to like fit the donor's story versus the person on the street. But we do really communicate mostly to donors because that's our purpose for fundraising, right? We need the funds to make this happen. We don't have any government funding. We are completely supported by individual contributions and other larger gifts. But I think that's the reason to market, is to be funded. And so that's really who our true audience is. But we do get people coming to our shelters who've seen our commercials and heard it on the radio, and it resonated with them. So
I think that's, there's a lot of, Union Gospel Mission presents such an interesting case study to me because you do have the donor and the people experiencing homelessness, you know, that dichotomy, but then you also have several different vehicles, right? You have your shelters and those things, but then you have, did you say you have a thrift store? And then I know of the car dealership, right? You can, so now you're talking about like donate a car or buy a car. You have a lot of moving pieces. Let's talk about, and I like what you said, the story is the same no matter what, but realistically, you do have to kind of go out and let people know that I can buy a car from you, as opposed to come and volunteer or donate or whatever, right? So how do you, like, those are some things I find fascinating.
That's one of our challenges.
Is it really?
Yeah, we have 4 thrift stores now. We opened 2 last year, and a car lot that takes donations, fixes them up, and resells them, and it's income, right? But it's also, those places are also job training opportunities for people in our program. So that's one of the core reasons they're there. The core message of those places is still the cause, right? And that's what sets them apart. And I think that's sometimes hard for us because they are businesses that are running, and they need to know that, or the public needs to know, oh, you can donate your car here, you know? So we have to get that message out there with specific advertisements about it, but it's donate your car and help the homeless,
right?
You know? So
it's still that mission-driven message as opposed to, just donate,
that's
price an item kind of stuff,
yeah.
So just super curious, is the Union Gospel Mission Motors team, is that what it's called? Isn't that it?
Yeah, Union Gospel Mission Motors.
Yeah, wonderful, nailed it. Marketing works. See, is that team also posting the cars on, sites like Car Gurus and, Auto Trader and stuff like that?
Yeah,
or is that run through the marketing department?
No, we have them do it. All the inventory goes online for them, but all their messaging and branding and advertising goes through our department.
Did you have to work with them on the guidelines for like how to take a picture or
we
do you
should. Probably. I haven't gotten that detailed into. I don't think they're bad. I think they're doing a great job.
Yeah.
But I haven't really had to go and tell them how to do it, so they're doing a good job. But maybe that would be a great thing to do.
Yeah, so I just want to just let everyone know, Dorothy joined us online. She said something earlier, and I just had a chance to get to it. Building trusted relationships in business works the best in lasting income. So she's, definitely long game mindset.
Yes.
Which is a great segue because I want to talk a little bit about like data and analytics. So I'm a big believer because the digital space offers us so much information in terms of metrics. I'm not talking about cookies or consumer data. That stuff's big brothery and icky in a lot of ways. And I do agree that's where we didn't even know that existed when we were kids, but now we know, we're being monitored at all times. But how are you tracking data? Are they looking at like how many cars we sold? Are you looking at how many donations came in? Is that influencing decisions, or is it more just metrics you look at?
Definitely influences decisions. And it's hard for me to talk much about the car aspect because I'm not really involved in that as
Sure.
much. But yes, we love the internet in the sense that we can see what's working and what's not, and we can
Yeah.
adjust things really easily
Yeah.
and test things according to that. So we're always evaluating our efforts, and if things are resonating, like ads, we will change an ad if it's just not gaining traction, you know, because it's just not resonating and people aren't interacting with it. So that's always evolving and moving. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I think on one hand you can get lost in the data where you're looking at it too much and maybe making decisions too quickly because it just didn't have enough time.
Right.
And I get lost in this. I have a newer client, and their numbers were so bad that when we started being a little bit more consistent and clean and simple, their numbers got really good. And then as we kind of plateaued, now I'm like obsessing over it. I'm like, why aren't we growing still? And I know better, but they're new and I want to, gain that traction.
Yeah.
But then the other side is not looking at it at all and not allowing any data to influence decisions. And I think
Yeah.
you can get, there's a happy middle area.
And you don't want to, change it in a dramatic way from your brand just to get the attention either.
Right.
Because that's the whole building trust and longevity in your brand messaging. And we could put a really sad homeless face with black and white and intense contrast, and get a lot of engagement, like, oh, that's really emotional, but it's not us. That's not how.
Yeah, or does it translate? Yeah, you're shaming an audience to gain another, or is it translating into an act? Is it a click or is it a donation, right? Because those are two different metrics too, right?
And I totally, and I just think that you want someone you're going to have a long-term relationship with, and it's their quick donation might be nice right then, but do they really align with your values? And is it a natural connection? Is it a natural friendship? Where they're going to be. They're going to find joy and resonate with what you're doing consistently in the long run. Yeah.
In line with that, have you all given any thought to you want to avoid the poor shaming, the old FDR, like pictures of Appalachian poor people, poor shaming style thing. But at the same time, too, you also run the risk of virtue signaling, which I feel turns a lot of people off.
Okay, what is that? Virtue signaling? How would you define that?
Where you would have some sort of an advertising campaign to where you would say, okay, look at the impact your dollars are going for, which is good. But then someone turns around and puts it on their own social media to say, oh, look how good I am because I did this. Right?
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if you saw during the riots, George Floyd, right? There was some early riots and these influencers would be out and you would see other people grab video. One was a gal gets out of her car, grabs like a broom or a paint roller, has her husband get the shot of her doing a little bit of tidying up and then jumping back in. So it's a little bit of that, right? It's a little bit of that ickiness, like look at, and maybe they only gave $2.50, but they share your campaign. So yeah, that is a funny tension there. And I think we talked about this is supposed to be the tension of marketing. So yeah, it's either on one hand, you run the risk of poor shaming or homelessness shaming, but then on the other end, this whole just look at how great we are or how great our community is because we support and give back, and aren't we awesome in saving everybody?
Yeah, I think it just goes back to that childhood experience, I think, of what is sincere, what is true vulnerable stories, and what's I think sincerity and then natural connection and then joy, ongoing joy. I think those are what make a real relationship work and a real brand relationship work. Yeah. Go ahead.
Going off what you said with the market, to me it sounds more like instead of trying to sell the hype, because a hype only lasts for so long, but the relationships will last for longer. So that's, to me that's the difference in your approach is instead of trying to sell that hype and, virtuous or whatever that is, being able to actually market to people that are going to build relationships with that'll last.
Right. Yeah. Hype isn't sustainable, right? It's going to crash eventually.
Well, and those old marketing sayings and sales sayings crack me up. Like, you don't sell the steak, you sell the sizzle. And anymore, it's not even that. It's you actually sell the relationship the cow and the farmer and the environment has, right? Like, that's what you're actually anymore trying to sell. Isn't, it's the sizzle. Like that saying always killed me. While there was some truth to that at some point, what would that mean for Union Gospel Mission to try to take that approach? I don't think it would be authentic.
No, it wouldn't. It's just what is the good stuff that's real, with our brand, and that's really all you need. And I mean, you can find new ways to say it, right? We change up campaigns every 3 years or 4 or whatever, because you want to ignite conversation about what you're trying to do, and attract people that are aligning with your values and want to accomplish the same things you're accomplishing. And so, but the core of it is still good and true and real, and that will just carry you all the way through.
Oh.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you had mentioned that that campaign that your team put together went on for about 3 years. Is that pretty normal to do a campaign that long, or did you say, hey, this isn't working anymore, we need to change it up a little bit?
Yeah.
What was the thought process there? Because I'm curious too about what are the metrics? If it's not working, do you scrap it after 1 year?
Right. We like to give it time.
Yeah, let it breathe. And
because I think not enough people see it. I think repetition is also what builds a relationship, right? Seeing that consistent messaging and that imagery, you start to remember it more and maybe connect with it differently each year. And so I don't know if that's standard. I just think we just felt like it was working for a lot of people and got a lot of great feedback, and great donations were coming in for it. Yeah.
Was it hard to switch then? I think that's the
Yes.
PS to that. Was it really hard to transition out of something you like get a lot of milk out of that cow, right?
Right. Yeah, and we didn't want to keep milking it necessarily.
Yeah, I know.
Say it.
Awkward metaphor. It's all right.
It's okay.
I led you right into that one.
It's okay. But at the same time, we could have probably kept going with it, but I just think we actually wanted to shift our message a little bit, because it wasn't just about providing dignity to people, but it was about real life change. And we felt like that message wasn't getting out there. So we had more to say about what we were doing. And I think we were feeling, is there another way to do this? So we ended up going with a campaign called Real People, Real Change, where it's still tied to that dignity, that these are real people in our neighborhood, but what they're experiencing is real change. It's not just a shelter and a bed, and it's a lot deeper than that. So, and now we ended up even modifying it a couple years later after that to real change is possible. And so there's this statement of hope, and we're evolving, and we like to do that because we learn more about ourselves and we learn more about our community, and really the temperature of the topic around homelessness changes and is kind of intense. So we want to just shape every year what's going to communicate well now.
That was actually, it's funny you say that, because that was a conversation that actually came up at Business Brew before the pandemic, because we've always kind of done it downtown. It's centrally located, and the building we were at before, homelessness was much more visible. And somebody came in, and it was a hot topic, and it actually ended up kind of guiding something. And the conversation was not at all about homelessness, but it does. And you're right, that temperature check. And I like what you said about just letting a campaign evolve and not forcing it, but just seeing where does the story go next. I think that might answer your question, Francisco, because I think, one, there's probably a lot of data out there, but two, the other thing is they see the messaging every day, whereas we don't, right? And I think the tendency is to get lost, right? You go, oh, we're so sick of real change, real people, or real people, real change. We have to change it, instead of going, no, we really need to let this naturally evolve into the next thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Which marketing tactic gets like the most traffic? Billboards, these, which one gets most traffic?
Simple, I feel like, is maybe my biggest. What gets the most traffic is simple. What's going to say something quickly, and just repetition, I think, too. And if it feels authentic to what you're actually doing, and not just attention grabbing, but if it's sincere.
I mean, you can.
Let you out of that one. I think what he was asking was the specific medium. What medium?
Yeah, like
channel?
radio, billboards, which ones that get more people to you?
Well, we have
It's okay to say you don't know if you don't know.
Yeah, well, not entirely. Yeah, for sure. I don't know exactly, but I do know that our direct mail is one of our biggest still income streams, and so we. Mail is a big one, but billboards are really hard to measure, so you really can't measure them.
And you can buy, you can buy eyeballs for pennies on the dollar on Facebook or digital ads. a billboard on Division might run you $1,000, $2,000 a month, and you might get 50,000 cars a week. But does that translate? So eyeballs are easy to get. I always answer that question by, where are the people at that you're trying to reach? And Union Gospel Mission sounds like they've learned direct mail really works. And I think anymore, especially being 2022, we get lost in digital when there are still some old school things that work if you know that's where your audience is.
And yet our online growth is like, it's really picked up in the last 5-6 years, like where it's just really this. And direct mail is kind of going like this, right? Where it's fizzling out and naturally because of technology.
Right.
But so we have to pay attention to that. And it's just changes.
I was thinking about pushing maybe ads on podcasts because it's taking over radio.
Oh yeah, and that's
podcasts
the
are-
other thing is if you know that your audience is there, and the thing I always caution too, and you would have to know this at Union Gospel Mission, is that where's your audience at physically? So you have probably a territory you're trying to reach, but you really don't want to go beyond that. So can I hyper local advertise on a podcast? Is it possible for me to run local ads through Spotify or whatever, right? And yeah, I think that's an option. Same thing with digital ads. Do I have the option to geographically limit where I'm advertising? Otherwise, you're just paying money for people you won't reach. And I caution people that on radio and TV in our market, because the Spokane media market is huge. It goes from the east side of the Cascades into western Montana, into Canada, and down into Oregon. So when you run an ad on KHQ or KXOY or a radio station, it's potentially reaching all those people, which is great if you want to reach all those people. If you just want to reach people in downtown, you just wasted dollars on all those people that your message, it falls on deaf ears or whatever, right? So you probably have to take those things into consideration too when deciding your media mix.
Yeah, and we send out surveys asking people, where did you hear about us? And TV and radio is pretty big up on that.
Wouldn't that hit a certain demographic though? Because I'm
For
just
sure.
a little bit snarky. Watch those news channels are old.
Yeah, which is our donor base.
Which is their donor base,
Our donor base is a lot older. I think that's kind of common for nonprofits.
But you want to go after.
For sure, you don't want to be non-existent on the channels where the younger generations are, right?
Yeah.
There's still something to build there, so for sure.
So I want to ask kind of a hardball question, right? So we're talking a lot about this, and it seems Union Gospel Mission, I think in terms of a business, has a pretty good footprint. And you have 4 retail locations, you have Union Gospel Mission Motors, and then not to mention all of your outreach centers and your all that. What are some of the things that you've learned about how maybe a smaller business can do this when we think about more like organic or grassroots growth? Like how do we do that if I don't have the ability to buy a billboard on Division or run a bunch of ads?
Yeah.
Right. What are some of the things that maybe some advice you have for those those businesses?
Well, I think online is where it's at for those businesses really, and making personal connections with people in town who have the influence and but still really resonate with what you're doing, right? I think it has to be a natural friendship there. So I just think locally, it's just connecting with the right people who are in line with what you're doing, but online might be it's so cheap, right?
Yeah, it really is. And that's a really good, I think, marketing best practice is, instead of you trying to go out and build that community, find the people who are already engaging that community and see if you can build those natural relationships. So like Vista, right? So instead of you going out and trying to, shake the hand of every realtor, go to the realtor association meetings, right? Like find the large groups of people and then, just naturally use those those communities and groups.
Yeah, I think if I were UGM small, like without all that, I would be connecting with other people doing the same thing that I was doing, and we do that now. Other nonprofits in town, we're friends with them and build relationships there, and together you share connections and ideas, so I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, okay, so last few moments, any other questions? We'll take some from online. We've had more just comments than questions. So any last? All right, so out of your 13 years at Union Gospel Mission, what is your most favorite thing that you've either worked on or the team has done? What is like the thing you hang your hat on?
Oh man. I love our campaigns. I think I have the most fun building a campaign because you take one super simple message, and I love brainstorming with the team on how we just take this big thing we're doing and simplify it into this one core thing. And I just love applying it in all these different channels. You know, you have billboards, and you have space ads, and you have your own mailing list, and online, how's that looking like? And just thinking, how do you take that message and just spread it in this nice, consistent, beautiful, truthful way, where it's just authentically communicating something that it's not complex, it's just real. And I don't know if that's very clear, but I also love the photography aspect. I do most of the photography for UGM, and it's just catching the faces of people who are letting me capture them in a very vulnerable way, and just getting to show people, like, this is your neighbor, you know, this is someone who lives here, and that really ignites something in me.
I think you had so many great things that you said and a lot of really good takeaways, but I think if one thing that stands out and resonates the most with me is if you're a business, and I know it's difficult, especially if you're in a commodity or a widget or something that's like, I mean, I sell pens, how am I providing value? It's really trying to find the value behind what you do, or the problem that you solve, or really what are you bringing, and trying to find that story. And it can be difficult depending on the business. Obviously, being in a nonprofit and doing the work you do, it's a little easier, but I think about Bernardo Wills and how they've managed to find that they're taking, you know, somebody comes to them and they want to build a building for their business, and Bernardo Wills gets to take that vision and that dream and make it a reality, and that's the story that they try to tell, right? And I think the takeaways from you is try to find that story behind what you're doing, even if it is a commodity-based thing, and then tell that story the best you can.
Yes.
I think that's really good.
That's awesome. You really said it. I think there's joy in the natural excitement that started your business to begin with. What is that? And that's the story. So.
Awesome. Okay, round of applause for Jessica. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, that was really good.